What's up? Welcome in the final regular season edition of the Sooners on SI Postgame Pod. Ryan Chapman, joined by the great John Hoover. John, say hello to the people real quick.
37-17. That's all I got to say.
Beautiful. Carson, who is on the field, the great Carson Field, on the field at Tiger Stadium. Was that your first trip to Tiger Stadium?
It was, and it was pretty awesome. Game wasn't amazing, but heck of an atmosphere out there.
It was a great atmosphere, great stadium, but the regular season mercifully comes to an end. One to forget. Second time in 3 years that it's been one to forget. I wonder what the common denominator is. We'll get to that later. Oklahoma falls to LSU, 37-17. The big question coming into this, gentlemen, was, can the Sooners carry that momentum from rolling the Crimson Tide? They kind of did in the first half, actually. Oklahoma's offense came out. It wasn't exactly perfect in getting it going. Joe John Finley tried to run back a little bit of the same game plan he had against Alabama. It turns out this is something that an actual offensive coordinator would know. When you put film out there, teams learn from that, and you have to maybe deviate and find different things to do off of that. Instead, we saw the same crappy shovel pass. We saw the same anyway. Oklahoma fell behind a little bit, but then had some success. It was Grayson Halton who punched it from Garrett Nussmeier, Armason Thomas with the scoop and score, and then a back and forth, pretty drunk first half of football ensued. Lead changed a couple of times, but the biggest thing, John, and we'll start here, all season long, Oklahoma could not handle success. Now, generally that was defense makes a play, offense costs it up. Defense makes a play, offense costs it up. The Sooners went out the same way they came in 2024, at least in the regular season. A little bit different, though. Tonight it was offense makes a play, special teams gives up a kickoff return. Offense goes back down the field, makes a play, or the defense will make a play by virtue of knocking Garrett Nussmeier out of the game, and then the defense will allow a 50-yard run to one of the worst rushing attacks in the country. It was just a frustrating, head-racking first half, and the way Oklahoma should have been at least tied. Instead of let LSU go 66 yards in 45 seconds, they were down 7 points at halftime, couldn't score coming out of the half, and that was blouses, basically.
That's our show for today. I mean, Ryan put it in a nutshell. There were a couple of surprises. Number one, coming out of the first half, that OU gave up a 50-yard run to LSU, an LSU team that went, 107th in the country in rushing this season. Was it 107?
They were somewhere between. No. Rushing, they were in the hundreds.
They were in the hundreds.
Yeah.
What was 107? I wasn't dreaming that. The other thing that was surprising, OU answers back with a 50-yard pass to J.J. Hester, who caught the ball without bobbling it. It was shocking, guys. I'm not kidding. I'm sure y'all saw the game at home. Probably thought the same thing, which was as he's taking a 7-step drop, Jackson Arnold, and he's looking down the field. I'm like grabbing Ryan going, that's the deep ball. They're throwing a deep ball. I said it 3 times. It was crazy. The things that we saw tonight that we maybe didn't expect, including some action, Bauer Sharp, a 100-yard kickoff return against Oklahoma for the first time in 3 years since the Bedlam game in 2021.
Calling Baton Rouge was also played that night.
Oh, was it? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
In the post game, it's the first thing OSU played because that's their whole program.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally forgot about that. So anyway, so just some strange things tonight, and it made you, as an observer of this program, wonder beyond 6-6. You know, of course, we saw 6-6 coming weeks ago, maybe even months ago, as we were looking at the schedule and which team are they going to beat, which teams they're going to lose to. It kind of shook out 7-5 was a possibility, 5-7 was a possibility. I think we all settled on 6-6 as a strong possibility.
After Tennessee, certainly. Once you saw just how bad this offensive
way back
line
in September,
was, you started to go, okay, this offensive line's pretty garbage. Jack Strong's not who you thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? It started to be like, oh, how bad can this get?
And so we take into scope, this is a great trip for us. We get to go to Tiger Stadium. We get to see this great crowd, this amazing atmosphere. For this team, this was the culmination. This was it, 6-6. What now, Coach? Well, I'm going to have to hire an offensive coordinator. Oh, yeah, next Wednesday's National Signing Day. The week after that, the portal opens. And you guys that want to leave, you go ahead and leave because we're bringing in a bunch of people. Brent Venables said there's going to be real change in the program And frankly, it's going to start probably Monday, maybe possibly Sunday with the hiring of an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, we'll a good chunk of this pod is going to be spinning everything forward because that's the next question. Let's hammer the game first, though, before you, because you're exactly right.
Do you think people want to hear about hammering the game first, though? That's why I jumped into this.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys probably want to hear a little bit.
But I think a little bit about this game, though, like matters a great deal for going forward. Because coming out of Alabama, a lot of the questions were, okay, the way that Oklahoma's offensive line played, could that left side of the offensive line be a group that could develop into an SEC offensive line next year, right? Jack Snarl, that version of Jack Snarl, what we saw, could that be a guy that Oklahoma wants to come back and can run the offense? Yep. Xavier Robinson, is he the next boom star in the making? This defense, they finally have the defense that took the steps forward.
Yes, do they have the pieces they can build on?
Yeah,
in 2025?
And now what we saw tonight is the secondary got shredded. The offensive line regressed back to the unit that's been up and down, which I think is important. Jackson Arnold was unable to overcome the stuff around him. He was okay in spots. Xavier Robinson looked pedestrian. I don't think it was necessarily his fault, but he looked like a normal guy. Yep. Eli Bowen got torched twice. You saw his limitations. He just couldn't handle a receiver that was much taller than him. The passing defense is still bad. I don't care what Brent Venables says. The reason the passing defense numbers look better is because teams figured out, they're just chewing clock. Like, I think there's some stuff that happened tonight that rolls into the bigger question of what's going on there. Part of that's going to be, Carson, how do you think that Oklahoma handled the atmosphere tonight? We were talking about so much Tiger Stadium. These are the venues that Brent Venables is going to have to coach in, stuff like that. And it wasn't the 103,000 absolutely rocking and rolling. It was a crowd that was up for it, but it looked like 90,000 people. Like, there were a lot of
2/3 of them were mad at Brian Kelly.
Yeah, there were a lot of empty seats here and there, but it was a good crowd. It was a loud crowd. I didn't think they handled the atmosphere. There was only really one procedural penalty from the offensive line tonight.
Yeah, overall, early in the game, I thought they handled it very, very well. I mean, they were kind of going back and forth, getting the big stops when they needed to, allowing some big plays, but answering with big defensive plays, big runs by Robinson and the supporting cast. But once that kick return, I know that John mentioned this, once that happened, the crowd got loud. Definitely not the loudest that stadium can be, but it got to where you should expect it for an SEC game. And I don't think the Sooners adjusted too well. Obviously, they didn't score again after that play. And they just looked out of sorts on both sides of the ball. The offense, they couldn't really run down the field anymore. The defense, as you mentioned, the passing game was kind of horrendous today. And it just looked like they got kind of rattled by one play, and that was kind of the domino that led to just anemic offense, anemic defense, and just an all-around kind of dismal performance.
Feels like the stuff we've seen for 3 years, right? You obviously weren't here covering it the last 2 years, but 2022, it was one step forward, 50 steps backward, night in, night out, every week. It got better a year ago, but you saw this Oklahoma team, when they would have a negative play, it imploded. When you talk about the Kansas game, the OSU game, the bowl game, and tonight, Brent Venables, what he led with before we kind of got into some big picture stuff, he talked about it was like 3 different teams all playing in different directions, talking about the offense, defense, and special teams. They each had their moments where they were good, they were bad, they were all over the place, and now you're looking at who, again, you're going to lose Danny Stutzman, you're going to lose Billy Bowman, you're going to lose Deshaun Terry, you're going to lose Ethan Downs, all really steady pieces. R. Mason Thomas had some really nice moments. Has he had 2 nice moments here? He'll probably get his draft grade here in the next couple of days. We'll see what that looks like, but the fact of the matter is, Eli Bowen has been great. He's just coming off of this big-time performance against Ryan Williams, but we've seen it twice this year. He was in a great position against Theo Weiss, just too short. Yeah. He was in a great position on the first touchdown catch by Chris Hilton Jr., who had 3 catches for 45 yards total tonight. He had a 40-yarder and a 45-yarder for 2 touchdowns. He was in a great position the first time, wasn't good enough, and then he just got torched the second time. Like, if Eli Bowen is your best quarterback in this league going forward, the defense – he's going to have good nights, but they're always going to be susceptible to big wide receiving cores, which is what they got scorched against Tennessee with. It's what Auburn hit him over the head with, and it's what LSU killed him with tonight.
Yeah, Brent talked during the week about Eli Bowen being a prototype NFL corner at 5'10", under 6 foot, 5'11". NFL, he said. And the fact of the matter is, those guys are bigger than Eli Bowen. They're probably faster, more explosive, longer arms than Eli Bowen. This is not an effort to bury Eli Bowen. He has been their best corner. He has been a revelation this season with the way that he's played as a true freshman, which is mind-blowing. So he's only got a bright future in front of him. I could see where they might shift him a little bit if they get a little taller at the cornerback position, and they might shift him to the cheetah position, maybe perhaps. Although he's their best cover corner, why would you do that? I don't know. I think he's going to be fine long term. But the Stutzman thing is going to be a problem for this defense because he's been a forceful leader, a tackles leader, a spiritual leader for so long, for 3 straight years. And the question really, it's kind of a short-term question: is he going to play in the bowl game? Probably not. You're pretty convinced he's not. He said tonight, I'm not committed to it either way.
Jackson Arnold said that was Danny's last game and Billy's last game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's college football today. It's Danny. Don't play the bowl game.
Yeah.
All you're gonna do is hurt draft.
You're
stock.
6-6.
Yeah, and I know that's not Oklahoma. You should play. That's just what college football is today. I get that. So you're gonna have to replace that. You're gonna have to replace Billy Bowen. Feel probably good about Robert Spears Jennings and Peyton Bowen being there, as well as those young guys, Hardy, Reggie Powers, Michael Boganowski. But they got to find some more. And again, this is not I don't think Eli Bowen should be the corner. Not anything like that. But you need someone who's a lot bigger that you can travel guys around with, because LSU came out tonight, and Eli Bowen has been Oklahoma's best corner. The last film they saw was him doing a good job against Ryan Williams, and they relentlessly attacked him. Nussmeier went at him on the first drive with a 7-yard completion.
Let's give up credit to Nussmeier. He is, 1, a hell of a quarterback, and 2, an absolute baller.
Mm-hmm.
Dude either fractured or separated or possibly dislocated his throwing shoulder, misses 2 or 3 series, comes right back in and leads them on a touchdown drive. That when you were talking about the offense or the crowd getting crazy and wild and Oklahoma not responding, part of that was Nussmeier came back out of the locker room, was on the LSU sideline throwing darts, throwing warm-up passes, and everybody was getting fired up. And then the return happened, and he continued to use that extra time to warm up. And then when they needed him, he goes down and leads a touchdown drive and throws a beam 40 yards down the field with 45 seconds left to take him into the locker room.
Yeah, Nussmeier's return, it seemed like that was the last little bit, the last momentum swing that got LSU going.
Right?
Well, yeah, no, it totally was. And it's funny because I've watched Nussmeier a handful of times this year, and he is, like John said, an incredible quarterback. So much talent. I expect him to at least be backing up on Sundays one day. Definitely has some potential there. But what I've noticed he's struggled with is when he faces adversity, whether that's a really tough pass rush, whether he gets shaken up a bit. Both of those things happened in the Texas A&M game, and he just kind of collapsed after that. He played through his injury. The crowd got to him. A&M's pass rush really got to him, and he didn't play well. Tonight, he gets hurt. It looked like you said, it might have been a fracture. It looked serious. He obviously,
one of these chicken winging it coming on.
Yeah, he was not feeling well. Went to the locker room, obviously, but for him to come out and throw that many accurate deep balls, that many good checkdowns. He did everything he needed to do. He ran a couple of times, got first downs. He looked really, really solid, and that just, yes, it was not a great performance from OU's defense, but credit where it's due. Nussmeier played a hell of a game.
Nussmeier and those receivers he's got them stacked up like poker chips, and he just tosses them out when he needs one. It's like, holy cow.
Well, look at the receptions for them. There were 7 players on LSU's roster that had multiple catches today. That's absurd.
Well, when your opponent has what Oklahoma had, which was 3 wide receivers the entire game. One of them is a true freshman. One of them is a true freshman walk-on, and another one is a 5th-year senior, 6th-year senior who is still looking for his big break. It was, Brandon Thompson couldn't play, so it was kind of, I hate to say it, was kind of sad to watch that receiver corps that we saw in August. Remember, we were at a practice in August, and we're standing there going, those dudes are phenomenal. It's the best, the most talented position group on the team is the Oklahoma wide receivers. They get to November and there's nobody left. Yeah. It was unbelievable.
They didn't get out of August. They didn't get out of August.
No, they didn't get out of September.
Nussmeier finished 22 of 31 for 277 and 3 touchdowns. Again, hammering that pass defense is not there. And on top of that, you had the big R. Mason Thomas sack that knocked Nussmeier out of the game. That was one of Oklahoma's 2 sacks all night long. They only had 3 other quarterback hurries, and this was, let's go all the way back to August. Hoover and I are standing in the parking garage in Norman, and I told him the thing that I don't believe this defense is taking a jump to elite or anything this year is because they don't have just an absolute predator coming off the edge. We've seen it in R. Mason Thomas. He has been a situational pass rusher. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. He has only excelled when Oklahoma's either brought a ton of pressure, which has not been a lot, or when teams have been behind the chains, And again, tonight, Oklahoma was bringing pressure early. They couldn't sync up their pressure with the coverage on the back end, so they got scorched a couple of times. So they stopped bringing a ton of pressure. And then Nussmeier was comfortable after he came back in. All of this stuff, I think, who plays into the future. When you're talking about rebuilding the offense and what Brent Venables is going to have to do in 2025, this defense is no doubt a lot better. And Brent talked about it tonight. He's having to erase a decade of suck, basically. He put it more eloquently than I just did, but they've sucked for a decade. This defense is pretty good. It's really good. It's played winning football at times. This is not an elite defense that you can just pair with, like, Buster Faulkner's Georgia Tech offense and just run clock. And, like, what we saw last Saturday was an emotional moment, a great moment. It'll be remembered for a long time. That was the exception, not the rule, for what this whole team has been all year long, which is why there's so much that we're going to dive into now that they're going to have to overhaul in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, 1,000% true. Last week was the exception. You thought you saw, and maybe we did. I don't want to kill anybody here, but you thought you saw some real improvement from who they played the week before, Maine, Ole Miss, 14-10 lead against Ole Miss at halftime. And then they went into Maine and beat their brains out, and then they come out and they had a lead against Missouri, and you're thinking they should have won the Missouri game. But you're thinking, okay, so I see strides, and then they beat Alabama, beat the brakes off Alabama, and you're thinking, I definitely see strides now. And then what we saw tonight, was it a regression, or was it just a regression to the mean?
And let's start with, I know that everything around, all that stuff, that it's not just one player, but let's start with the quarterback, Jackson Arnold. This is going to be the big question the next week and a half or so. Oklahoma's going to hire an offensive coordinator. I wouldn't be stunned if it's announced Sunday or Monday. Brent Venables, when you asked about it, who said in the coming days,
In the next few days,
next couple days or so, they're going to have an offensive coordinator. I asked Jackson after the game, what's this next week going to look like for you as far as that decision-making process? He basically said, going to unplug, going to get back in the weight room, going to look at some of the film from this year. There's a follow-up about his decision. He said, meet the new OC, see how that goes. He said, only God knows the future, but then he wanted to say that there's nothing driving him away from Oklahoma right now. So it didn't sound like a full-throated, like, oh, I'm coming back, but it also didn't sound like a total, I'm just gone. Carson, let's start with you.
Yeah.
We've been in it. We've covered Jackson as a high school commit, all that stuff. Yeah. You've come in, you've seen 2 games in person and kind of watching the OU from afar. If you're Brent Venables, if you're the new offensive coordinator, do you even want to bring Jackson Arnold back?
That's a hard question to answer, I feel like, because I do feel like there definitely is upside with Jackson Arnold, be it just his arm strength. I mean, there's a reason he was such a highly touted prospect out of high school. But you have to have those concerns about ball security, decision making. Granted, offensive line, like you said, not been a strength for the Sooners this year. But I wouldn't totally give up on the guy, but I would if I'm the new coordinator, the coaching staff. Look at your options. See who's going to be in the portal. Look at what you have coming in. I mean, there's a lot of talent going to be out there. That kid from Tulane, Menza, he might transfer. I think there's going to be a lot of big names. So it's one of those things you have to evaluate what works best in the system.
As well as Michael Hawkins. What piece does he fit in the puzzle?
Yeah.
Do they both come back? Do they both leave? Does one come back, one leave? We'll see.
Let's just say Jackson Arnold stays, okay? I think this is a situation where Oklahoma needs to look at who's in the portal, and it might be you sit down and say, you're welcome to stay, we'd love for you to stay, but we're going to bring in a quarterback to compete. Because when you start going through it, like, personally for me, if you're telling me, let's just say it's Ben Arbaugh that is the Washington State offensive coordinator, let's say he's the hire. If you're deciding between John Mateer and Jackson Arnold, I'd rather have Arnold. I think that Mateer has decision-making issues. Arnold can run the ball just like Mateer can. He's got the better arm. I'd rather see that coaching thing. If you're telling me Mensa or Arnold, I think I'm taking Mensa. You know what I mean? So that's where you get into this.
He's got the better upside.
The answer, but I mean, Arnold's the higher-rated guy, but
you bring in Mensa to compete, and then Arnold says, "Nah, screw it, I'm leaving."
How do you evaluate Jackson Arnold in all passing-wise when he had no actual quarterback coach? It's very clear that Seth Luttrell was aggressively unqualified for this. Then he has no wide receivers, and his offensive line was booty. I mean, I don't really know how to even evaluate the Jackson Arnold passing experience.
What about Connor Wigman, Texas A&M? How do you think about that fit?
No, he sucks. He sucks.
He's not good.
You're not gonna bench Jackson Arnold for a guy that got benched with arguably maybe a worse offensive situation. But they at least won games, I guess. I think it becomes it's a very and it's just so complicated because you can't afford to run him off with no answer. It becomes a real headache with Jackson Arnold, and that gets you to the offensive line. The offensive line did show those incremental improvements. It wasn't great tonight. I think, though, John, for me, that was more about what Joe John Finley was unable to do as far as building off of what he showed up. I mean, they had 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama. They threw some different stuff at him. Joe John's not an offensive coordinator. Right? He's not even a good tight end coach.
Not yet.
He could be.
He might be something.
Joe John can't even put a tight end room together. When he got appointed, everyone said, "Wow, you're going to reward the worst guy on staff with
as the offensive coordinator."
He needs to work on that. Maybe he'll get a chance somewhere else. But
I'll tell you this: I was looking as we walked down the last 7. Actually, for me, it was 10 minutes. I sneaked on the field a little early. Walked onto the field and walked behind the Oklahoma bench. I saw some bad body language from the Oklahoma coaching staff. I saw some body language that would indicate some guys are going to be looking for a job in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, did you notice anything? I guess you weren't there for the Missouri game. And the Missouri game was just a body language fiesta for everybody as far as bad body language for Brent Venables, all that stuff. I think the fact of the matter is a lot of these people knew. This was their last ride here, their last go-around as they go and Joe John Finley's not going to come back. We'll see. Bill Beanbo's probably going to come back. Emmett Jones, I don't even care to bring Emmett Jones back from Oklahoma. These fresh wide receivers have had 12 weeks to get better, and none of them made any kind of impact. I mean, that is not the development success of Emmett Jones. You saw none of that this year at any point.
That is interesting you say that. It's just, I think there's going to be a lot of turnover. You don't know what to expect. Obviously, it's going to be a new coordinator, but who stays, who goes. I didn't personally notice any body language issues, but I wasn't paying attention like John was when he was near the sideline.
You're also shooting the game. We're able to just take it in. You know what I mean?
But, I mean, I went out, coach handshake, Venables, Kelly, obviously after the game, see players shake hands. I didn't see anything alarming there per se. Obviously some heads down. He just lost a big game. It could have been a winning record instead of a 500 record, but nothing that I saw personally.
It'll be interesting. They should just clean house. I mean, DeMarco doesn't need to come back.
The offensive staff.
Bill Beanbo's the only one you keep, and that's because I do think there was improvement there. The tight end room is going to be a tire fire. I don't know how Joe John Finley continues to call these double passes for Bauer Sharp, by the way.
How? What? What are you doing?
Let's set quick sidebar. This may have to be a Hoover and I conversation.
Okay.
Worst Oklahoma plays of the year. This was a conversation that was raging on in the postgame press conference.
I told you right there on the sideline, and I put it in the live blog. I said Oklahoma just outdid itself for worst play of the year.
We've got some incredible candidates. Jackson Arnold's pick six against Tulane was awful. Jackson Arnold's
not his fault though. Remember?
Oh, he threw the ball, John. They were protecting a young quarterback. That was Jackson's fault. He threw the ball. Jackson Arnold's second fumble against Tennessee, which was not in the playbook. That one was pretty bad. Yeah. The fake punt against South Carolina was like maybe the most egregious just decision of the year. I don't know if it was the worst play. Yeah. Jackson Arnold fumbling off of his leg that turned into a scoop and score that lost you the Missouri game. Yeah. The Bauer Sharp double pass tonight.
You named them all. You nailed them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are the worst plays. Which one for you was the worst of the year?
Sounds like a Twitter poll in the making.
The problem is there are too many plays.
Too many plays, yeah. I think tonight was the worst because, as someone pointed out to me on Twitter, that means that they practiced that all week and thought it was a good idea. The coaching staff and the players came together and said, "This is going to work, guys." That's what makes this one the single worst. Now, you could say that about the fake punt. Just in terms of execution, those other Jackson Arnold fumbles were probably, or pick sixes were more catastrophic. But this one was, you just look around and you say, I can't even envision in my head where that call was created. And is it a personnel issue where like, okay, we're running this play. And then they get out there and they line up, and then it's like, oh, the tight end is Bauer Sharp? Is that the H-back we're throwing to? Okay, well, let's go ahead and execute it instead of calling timeout or something. I don't know, but it was something that, like I said, they repped it in practice. They got to it. They thought it was going to work. They liked how it looked, and then they ran it, and it was a damn disaster.
Here's a tip for any up-and-coming coaches. The trick play sheet is not a book like this. It's very small. They clearly, Oklahoma has one guy, two guys, because they tried it with Taylor Tatum, that they believe are their trick play horses when it comes to that stuff.
Through a halfback pass.
Brennan Thompson was the last one. When Brennan Thompson is hurt, do not go to your third string trick play quarterback. Don't do it.
This is a former college quarterback we're talking about.
Don't.
Remember now.
He played at Southeast. It doesn't count. Bauer Sharp. I've never seen a worse player get more stuff schemed up specifically. It's all year long. It was Seth Luttrell. It was Joe Finley. It was the jet sweeps. It was the screens, the shovel passes, a double pass. This staff on offense can't evaluate the guys in their own locker room. Don't bring any of them back except for Bill Beanbo because Susi and whatever. The offensive line got a little bit better.
That's not wrong, what he just said.
They can't.
They
Xavier
schemed up
Robinson
plays specifically for Bauer Sharp, and how many of them worked? Like maybe 40 or 50% of them worked, produced good yardage.
The slants.
Drops. He led the team in drops.
Yeah.
He led the team in missed blocks. You know, at some point in the mesh of the run game.
The slant at Auburn worked.
I loved talking to Bauer Sharp. I loved getting the 2 times this year we got to interview him.
Until he next questioned people at Texas because he couldn't play.
I didn't know he did that.
Yeah, he next questioned Bob Prisbillo, and he basically poo-pooed another question after the Texas game when asked about how do you guys move on from here.
Is that the last time he came out for interviews?
Yeah, it's the last time he was
makes
requested.
sense.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Anyway, not to rail on people, whatever.
We're piling on one guy
Well,
for a team that went 6-6.
I was
It's
piling
not
on
fair on our part.
The
It's not
coaches put him in a bad. He clearly could not handle what he was asked to do in the Southeastern Conference, and that's on the coaching staff for continuing to put him in that spot.
fair. Agreed.
It just leads into a bigger question mark of what is this group going to look like? Signing day is coming up on Wednesday. OklahomaSoonersOnSide.com, all your signing day coverage. Who ends up in this class? Who doesn't end up in this class? This performance probably did not inspire much confidence, especially your skill position players. We'll see what that ends up being.
The other side of that coin is receivers and quarterbacks and running backs are looking at this team saying, I can do better than that. I can go to Oklahoma and make a difference.
I can go to Oklahoma and play for a head coach who meddles with the offense, who clearly can't win big games, who is now going to finish 6-7 maybe twice. It's a great pitch. It's a great pitch. There's a lot of other SEC teams that can pay money that actually win football games.
I shook hands with Brent after the press conference because I was grateful here on Thanksgiving weekend for his forthrightness in all these press conferences during a very, 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 very difficult season for him. And I ain't talking about 6-6. I just wanted to let him know I appreciated him. So I was the only person, I guess, who did that.
Yeah,
I felt kind of silly doing it, being the only guy out there, but it was important to me to let him know that I appreciated him, sticking with us, all of us media idiots for so long. I thought that was important.
It's a tough season off the field. I have little sympathy for the on the field stuff because he's the one that detonated.
$8 million.
He detonated the offense in 1 year.
Yeah.
They still can't figure out a way to live with any kind of success. And now it fast forwards to December 9th. This is, I think, the really interesting part. Who asked about the portal opening up, right? December 9th. Brent basically said, we've been planning for this for months. There should be no surprises. And by that, Brent said, there are always going to be a couple of surprise guys that enter the transfer portal, but you're not going to be surprised by that happening, if that makes sense.
I'm not surprised that surprises are happening, he said.
It's 1:30 in the morning. I hope that explanation made sense. But when you look at this portal class now, you're going to have to revamp your tight end room. You're gonna have to go and get a bunch of wide receivers who can actually play football at this level, because I don't know if any of these freshmen can.
Or assuming the guys that are coming back, that A, want to come back, or B, healthy enough to come back.
Yeah.
After all the soft tissue injuries they had this year.
You're gonna look at that. Your running back room, if DeMarco leaves, what does Javonte Barnes do? Javonte Barnes is a DeMarco guy.
Yeah.
Taylor Tatum got buried. Now, Taylor Tatum also couldn't hold the football, but
Yeah.
I can see Taylor Tatum transferring. Gavin Sawchuk hasn't been used all year. I know he's been banged up, and he wasn't getting used before that. You might have to go and revamp your entire running back room in the transfer portal. We just talked about quarterback. Offensive line, in a weird way, it might be the only spot that Oklahoma's not scratching their head going, we need this guy and this guy and this guy. What a turnaround.
Yeah. They got an offensive line coming back, probably, we think, that they can actually build around. We'll see.
What have been your thought? You've only seen the good version of the offensive line. This is the good version of the offensive line for everyone.
Fair.
Is that a group that you think can? It's really, really young, right? A pair of redshirt freshmen on the left side. Troy Everett, who didn't get to play until Texas and still been working himself back. Fetchy Weewoo, right guard, took a little bit of time. They're going to have to do right tackle, but they'll have Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton come back in. I didn't think that they were like physically overwhelmed today until they were down 17 and just in obvious passing situations.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, they played a good game against Alabama, which is very not easy to do. Tonight, I mean, they didn't look great, but considering who they were playing, I mean, LSU, year in, year out, that defensive line, they produce NFL studs. They just do. They just have a tradition in that, and this year's no exception. And they held their own. I mean, there were some times that Jackson Arnold, he had no time. But all in all, I wouldn't say that, this falls on them that they weren't able to catch back up. The offense had its own problems. The defense couldn't stop the pass like we talked about. So, I mean, I think, like John said, there definitely is a building block there for them to get better, get a little bit more experienced. You said they're very youthful. So I think they definitely could get a lot better, which in turn would help this offense greatly.
Yeah, the question is just going to be, does Oklahoma have the time for them to get better? This offensive coordinator hire this next year for Brent Venables is going to be the make or break year in the Venables era. He's either going to prove that he can get this thing turned around and get it going, or Oklahoma will be undergoing another coaching search next offseason, a much more expensive coaching search. And I'm not sure that when you talk about the fact of the pieces they're going to lose defensively, paired in with the overhaul they're going to have offensively, I don't know if this offensive line is going to have enough time, John, to show that in 2 or 3 years that they could be an SEC caliber group.
Well, just spin it back to last winter when they landed a 2-year starter at Michigan State, and they landed a 2-year starter at North Texas, and they landed a 2-year starter eventually later on in the summer from SMU. It just they brought in guys that looked like on the surface when they signed that they were going to be able to come in, integrate in immediately with the offense, with the system, with the offensive coordinator, with the offensive line coach. And it was a miserable failure. The first 6 weeks of the season were an abject disaster for that offensive line. So you go back to the portal. Well, that didn't work. Let's try it again. That's basically what you're doing. Yeah, but this guy started 3 years at, name me a school, Memphis. This guy started for 2 years at Michigan. Does that mean they're going to come into Oklahoma and be impact offensive linemen? No. So, I don't know. What we learned this year, 2024, about the transfer portal is that it doesn't. Last year it worked really well, I think, for Walter Rouse specifically to come in as a 4-year starter at Stanford and to play that 5th year at OU. That one worked out great because he's in the NFL now. What was there another guy that?
If you look at like the
guy was a transfer 2 years ago.
Yeah, McCade Matoyer came in.
Matoyer was there 3 years ago.
When Matoyer came in, he was one guy at right guard getting plugged into an experienced offensive line.
It wasn't a whole rebuild like they're kind of facing now. And I don't think they have to do a complete rebuild. I think they've got a couple of pieces back. Taylor, Sexton's going to be better. He's going to be healthy. They've got some. Troy Everett's got another year, so they're going to be better at the offensive line across the board. Well, we say that. We've been waiting all season for them to get better, and it took literally half the year for it, 3/4 of the year for it to happen.
It's a if they could go out and find just like a badass right tackle in the transfer portal, I don't think anybody would say no.
Yeah, one guy, right?
If they could find a really veteran, just like he could play guard or tackle and be like basically a jack of all trades. If anyone gets banged out, you've got that. I don't think that'd be a bad thing either,
Yeah.
But. It's going to be really interesting because whoever's coming in to take over this offense is going to have, I don't know. What do you think, Carson? Do you think it's going to be easier to have a 1-year overhaul knowing that you might have to replace basically all the skill positions except maybe Xavier Robinson and you're going to have to make a decision at quarterback? You can just say immediately, I can bring in all the guys I need and kind of inherit the offensive line, or does that make it more difficult because you're building from square one and it's not like a, hey, you guys know each other, I'm just the coach that's to come in and get everything up to speed. It's kind of a half dozen to one, you know what I mean, 6 of the other.
I feel like there's two sides to that coin because I feel like sometimes starting from scratch, if something really is in shambles, that could easily be the way to go. But sometimes pieces, no matter how highly touted they are, how good they are, how much success they had, kind of to John's point at the last school, it doesn't always work out. You're not always a culture fit at that school, don't always fit in their system. So it could go either way. I know that a lot of coaches say Jed Fish going from Arizona to Washington. He brought a lot of players from Arizona to Washington. They haven't been great this year, but they've been a competent football team. A lot of coaches I figured out are better when they bring a lot of their own versus I'm getting this kid from here. Kind of that cohesion, it's hard to kind of replicate. So it's hard to say which one would be easier, but I don't know.
It's interesting
You
because
got to have chemistry.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
offensive line, and it took this offensive line. They started the same 5 guys tonight for the 4th week in a row. Think about this. It's week 14 of college football season, 12th game. So for that to have happened for the first time, 4 straight games for the first time tonight, kind of mind-blowing how important chemistry is on the offensive line.
it's a big issue. It's one that's going to have to get tackled by whoever that new offensive coordinator is. That'll probably come in the next 48 hours, like we said. And this has kind of been the big talking point since Set the Trails dismissed. There is no like obvious clear-cut answer that you say that guy's gonna be the hire and it's gonna just rock and roll and it's gonna be perfect. I mean, whatever you want to pick. Dan Mullen, if that ends up being the guy that hasn't been circulated in a while, but he hasn't been coaching for 3 years. The complete other side of that, Ben Arbuckle, who feels like the leader of the clubhouse,
Has only been coaching for 3 years.
he's only been a college offensive coordinator for 3 years. I just keep going back to, man, Arbuckle has shown improvements as far as taking things over and making it better a year from now. He's shown that he can be pretty creative in the running game, though he's got an air raid background. They also laid an absolute egg against Wyoming today.
They did.
That's kind of 2 of the last 3 weeks. The Washington State offense hadn't been all that great. And if you're Brent Venables, are you really going to trust your head coaching career with a guy who's going to be entering his 4th season as an offensive coordinator total at the collegiate level?
Yeah, that's one of the questions that I asked Brent on Tuesday was, would you prefer a guy who's been doing this a long time, a little bit older, longer in the tooth, a little bit more experience, or a guy who's got new ideas and new energy and new creativity? And he said, what do you say? Both. There are young guys and old guys who fit my criteria. So that has no bearing on it. So I don't know. That's his. He's the one that's got to make the hire, and it's an important hire.
I do not envy Brent Venables. All they're doing next year is replacing Tulane with Michigan, who went out and beat Ohio State today. They're playing this exact same schedule. Otherwise,
Sooner Sharon Moore
running it back. Do you think there's going to be pepper spray involved in Norman early next year?
No.
Is that
Probably not.
Well, you know what? That might be the only way Oklahoma could stop a wide receiver downfield is that the defensive backs got pepper spray because the secondary still sucks. It's 3 years in, and the secondary still can't stop anybody. Is there anything else we need to cover here? This is kind of scatterbrained. It's also
It's very late.
1:45 in the
and
morning.
We're at the Spring Hill Suites where we stayed last night. Not tonight, but last night.
And
we're pulling an all-nighter. We're going straight to the airport after this.
We've also endured a terrible football season for 2 to 3 years because, again, the head coach can't. Anyway, I think you guys know. I firmly believe that we will be in a coaching search as a beat next year. It just looked every bit like Oklahoma had 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama. It was an emotional night, all that stuff, and none of that rolled over to this LSU game.
Kind of curious, kind of head scratching. The 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama, I think, is telling because guess what? They only had 1 week to prepare for LSU, and it looked like it. It looked like they had 1 day to prepare.
Well,
in some stretches.
It looked like somehow they thought that they were going to be able to do the exact same thing they did against Alabama against LSU, and that LSU wasn't going to prepare for
When
it.
that outside linebacker, I think he was OLB, was sitting there waiting for the
shovel?
shovel pass. He scraped up field and he looked at the quarterback and he said, "Oh, I'm just going to stand right here and wait for that guy to come to me." Came right at him and he just I was like, "That's not going to work this week."
I think
they're waiting for it.
I think you and I in the vlog at the same time were like, same ideas, can't do that. And then the next drive was the J.J. Hester 50-yard bomb, which you're like, that is totally different.
What? They haven't done that since like Ole Miss or something.
We flashed back to Auburn. It was
Auburn.
bizarre. It was incredible. So we've got a packed couple of weeks ahead. Wednesday is signing day. Then we'll have conference championship weekend. On Sunday, next Sunday. We'll find out what bowl destination Oklahoma goes to. The important thing there, obviously, is the practices for a young group. Then on December 9th, the next Monday, the portal window opens, which means that you'll probably have a bunch of announcements of guys that are portaling, and we'll know opt-outs and stuff like that for some of those defensive guys that are headed to the NFL. I think we're on R. Mason Thomas watch. I don't think he's going to go to the NFL, but he's had a really, really nice last couple of weeks here.
He's going to test well when he does go to the combine.
He is going to test well. Other than that, Carson, any other final thoughts here? As we kind of have a scattered brain pod, but that's what happens when they're 6-6 in a terrible football team.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of encouraging start today, kind of a back and forth game. Looks like there was a lot of carryover, and then that just went away after that touchdown like we talked about. Disappointing season, but I mean, a couple extra weeks of practice, huge. Huge for a team that needs an identity. I know that bowl games, they're not what they used to be. It's not as important. You're going to have multiple players opt out from OU, but it's still so much experience for these players that are going to stick with the Sooners next year. Get them a little bit more cohesive. Get that secondary a little bit better. Get the offense flowing a little bit more. That's the most important part of these next few weeks. Obviously, so many moving pieces. I know that Venables was asked how crazy this time is in the press conference today, and it's got to be crazy. New offensive coordinator coming in the next 48 hours probably. Portal window opening soon. But there's still so much they can gain from this, and so much they've probably gained from a 2-6 SEC season, playing in atmospheres like Tiger Stadium. Heck of an atmosphere, by the way. This trip was amazing. We ate some good seafood. Went to one of the best stadiums in college football. So there's so much that they can learn from just playing in atmospheres like Tiger Stadium, everywhere else they've played. So a lot of it's cliche wins and learning, but they definitely did a lot of learning this year.
I'll say this. It's Thanksgiving week, so I tend to profess my gratitude a lot on Thanksgiving week. First of all, I'm grateful for all the viewers and listeners, you guys on YouTube. You know I love you. You guys on the podcast have been amazing as well, so thank you all. I want to say how grateful I am for these guys as well. Holy cow, did I hire a superhero in him? Look at his videos tonight. Got them all done quick, got them all done fast. They look great. And then Ryan has just been an MVP. So Ryan carries us these days, you guys. I don't know about all of y'all been noticed, but the man is, he plays big. He's like Eli Bowen. He may be 5'9", he plays big, he plays huge.
And I feel like I got torched twice by a nobody twice with the way this podcast is going, but that's okay. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. That's the place to be for all of Carson's videos. Go back, watch the highlights. I hope, did you get neck? Did you get it? Was it there? Dang it. It was a half-hearted, by the time that they started playing neck, the student section was mostly cleared out anyway, so it wasn't the full neck, but that's okay. OklahomaSoonersOnSite.com for the highlights, all the post-game videos, all that stuff. Who wrote about his questions to Brent on the future, what that's going to look like. I wrote about Jackson Arnold and what he said as I was talking to him. For all that stuff, OklahomaSoonersOnSite.com. If you're watching this on Sunday, which of course you are because it's Sundays we're recording this, we'll have a ton of stuff on the site. As always, OklahomaSoonersOnSite.com. Just hit the football tab, scroll, you'll get all the videos, all the stuff like that. Closing down the regular season here in 2024.
What bowl game? Gasparilla?
I hope the Gasparilla Bowl. They may have played themselves out. I don't know if the Gasparilla Bowl is out. Do we want that team? Who knows? The Gasparilla Bowl would be ideal, though. That's a December 20th bowl game. We can get all this done before Christmas, make that thing happen. Go to Tampa. We would like to go to Tampa. I'd also like to go to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, to go to the Camelback. I don't know if that's possible, which means they're going to get sent to Shreveport because we haven't been to Louisiana or Memphis or Birmingham enough this year. And you know what? Some idiot's going to write out, in 1999, Bob Stoops played in the Independence Bowl. And guess what happened the next year? All that stuff. Yep. This has been a year of moral victories, I guess, for Oklahoma, which shouldn't exist in Oklahoma. But hey, Brent Venables, 2 years of moral victories and learning on the job.
Got nothing for me.
It's incredible stuff there. The next time you hear from us will not be on signing day. It will be whenever Oklahoma hires an offensive coordinator. It might not be a supersized pod, but we're going to get on the horn. We'll break down the hire, break down what they're going to bring to Oklahoma. How is this group going to fit? All that stuff. Then you'll hear from us at some point post-signing day as well, as Oklahoma will sign in a new class. This will be a little bit of a multi-pod week. Not a post-game pod on Sunday, but Obviously, as Oklahoma's off, but we will have the emergency pod for the offensive coordinator, the signing day podcast. So that'll be your 2 podcasts this week. We will not
bowl game podcast on Sunday.
We will not have a bowl game podcast on Sunday. Why? Because I'm not breaking down Oklahoma and Kansas in the Frisco Bowl. I'm not doing it. I refuse. Oklahoma's going to lose that game.
Kansas is 5-7.
Yeah.
Not going bowling.
Oh yeah, true. Sorry, whatever. So I was just going off the last projection. So they didn't get to a bowl game that's worth breaking down in a bowl game pod. So
That's
your 2 podcasts this week
perfect analysis.
are going to be the emergency podcast for the offensive coordinator, and then you're going to get the normal podcast probably on Thursday instead of Wednesday, so we can let all the dust settle on signing day and all that fun stuff. But the place to be, OklahomaSoonersOnSI.com. Just continue to follow the podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. That's so helpful for more people finding it. If you're a YouTuber, John Hoover Media is the YouTube channel. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, comment on who you want to be the offensive coordinator. It's Last Chance Saloon. Would you bring Jackson on the back? I want to know that as well in the YouTube comment section. But that'll do it for us tonight from Baton Rouge. For Carson, for John, thank you guys, seriously, for hanging out with us all year. I know it's not been fun to talk OU football for a lot of OU fans this year, right? Because of how this thing's gone. We appreciate you sticking with us, rolling through it. Portal season's going to be hectic. We're going to have continued basketball coverage all year long. The men just won the Battle for Atlantis tournament. Carson's going to be covering the Sooner men. I'll continue to have the Sooner women. That way, Hoover does not have to drive and to send down from Tulsa over and over again.
I'm
like
waiting
that.
for softball season.
Softball season, Guess what? I've been sitting on softball stories. Now is the time to launch those into the world. We'll have a bunch of softball stories, all that stuff. The party will rage on. Thank you all so much for your continued readership, listenership, all that stuff. Can't tell you how appreciative we are. We wouldn't be able to do crazy stuff like this without you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. However, we are going to catch flights. So we'll talk to you guys here whenever Oklahoma announces an offensive coordinator, and then again on Thursday on the Sooners on SI podcast.